In 1982, a significant event unfolded in the Middle East, the Israel invasion of Lebanon. This military operation, named Peace for Galilee, was a response to an attempted assassination of Israel ambassador to the United Kingdom by a Palestinian group. To understand the backdrop, we need to go back to 1948, to what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, or catastrophe. This year marked the beginning of a large Palestinian exodus with over 700,000 individuals displaced, many seeking refuge in Lebanon. Life in the Lebanese refugee camps was challenging. Palestinian refugees faced legal barriers restricting their property ownership and employment opportunities. This situation bred discontent and led to the formation of various Palestinian militant factions. In 1969, the Cairo Agreement marked a shift. It transferred the control of these camps from Lebanese authorities to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO. The PLO, alongside its constituent factions, began to establish social services and militant bases in these areas. Tensions escalated as Palestinian militants conducted operations against Israel, leading to Israeli retaliations. The IDF, the Israel Military Force, often targeted Palestinian camps and border villages in Lebanon, marking the beginning of a cycle of violence. Fast forward to 1982, Operation Peace for Galilee commenced as an attempt to eradicate PLO infrastructure. Initially planned as a brief mission, it expanded significantly, entailing extensive military engagements in densely populated areas. Now let's juxtapose this with recent events in Gaza. We observe striking similarities. The use of heavy military force, the involvement of civilians, and the targeting of urban areas echo the pattern seen in 1982. In both instances, these operations resulted in significant civilian casualties and displacement of thousands. Despite military superiority, complete eradication of militant groups was not achieved, leading to continuous cycles of conflict. Understanding these historical patterns helps us to grasp the complexity of the ongoing conflict. It's a cycle of action and reaction deeply rooted in the past, impacting the present and shaping the future of the region. Diplomatic channels and negotiations could have been considered. The complexities of the situations warranted a multifaceted approach on that balanced military action with diplomatic efforts. The outcome of the 1982 invasion offered critical lessons. Heavy military campaigns, especially in urban settings, can lead to unintended consequences, including civilian sufferings and the rise of new militant groups. Diplomatic solutions, though challenging, often present a more sustainable path to conflict resolution. In 1982, Israel aimed to establish a buffer zone along its border with Lebanon. This zone was intended to serve as a protective barrier preventing future incursions and attacks from militant groups operating in southern Lebanon. The invasion had a political dimension as well. Israel hoped to weaken Syrian influence in Lebanon and facilitate the establishment of a more friendly, right-wing Christian government in Beirut. This was envisioned as a step towards stabilizing the region in favor of Israeli interests. These objectives directly tied to Israel's broader national security strategy. The objective was to secure borders, deter future attacks, and reshape the political landscape of the region in a manner conducive to Israeli security and political interests. In reflection, these strategic objectives reveal the complex interplay of military, political, and security considerations that shaped Israel's decision in 1982. Prior to the invasion, Israel had been involved in assisting Lebanese Christian militias against the PLO since the mid of 1970s. This engagement was part of a strategy to contain and diminish PLO influence in the region. A significant diplomatic effort was the 1981 ceasefire, brokered by the U.S. Undersecretary of State Philippe Habib. This ceasefire, which followed intense shuttle diplomacy, brought an unprecedented calm to the Lebanese-Israeli border. However, it was a tense peace, shadowed by fears of renewed conflict. The ceasefire had its limitations. Ariel Sharon, a key Israeli figure of the time, believed that the agreement failed to encompass all forms of terrorism, particularly those originated for Lebanon but targeted Israelis and Jews in Europe and other regions. The interpretation, alongside internal PLO conflicts, and Israeli concerns over Arafat's control over various factions fueled skepticism about the ceasefire effectiveness in preventing further attacks. The path to the 1982 Lebanon invasion was marked by a complex interplay of diplomatic efforts and military strategies. Understanding these dynamics is crucial to comprehending the decisions that led to the conflict and its enduring impact on regional stability. By 1975, the Palestinian Liberation Organization had established a significant presence in southern Lebanon, effectively creating a state within a state. This development intensified the violence near the Lebanon-Israeli border, a situation exacerbated by the relocation of PLO bases to Lebanon following the civil war in Jordan. The conflict peaked during the Operation Litany in 1978, triggered by the Coastal Road massacre. In response, Israel began supporting Lebanese Christian militias, laying the groundwork for a political strategic alliance with the Maronite Falange Party. In hindsight, the 1982 Lebanon invasion was a culmination of prolonged tensions, strategic alignments, and complex interplay of regional conflicts. Understanding this context is vital for comprehending the motivations behind Israel's decision. Considering the historical and political context of the 1982 Lebanon War, Israel had several potential options, each with its own set of implications. Israel could have pursued more robust diplomatic efforts, possibly through intermediaries, to address the ongoing border tensions and the presence of the PLO in Lebanon. This might have involved more extensive negotiations with both the PLO and Lebanese government, as well as with major international actors. Instead of full-scale invasion, Israel could have opted for more limited, targeted military operations against specific PLO positions in Lebanon, aimed at reducing the threat without a large occupation. Focusing on the strengthening alliances with the non-PLO factions in Lebanon and bolstering internal security measures within Israel could have been another approach. This strategy will aim to isolate the PLO politically and militarily, while reducing the impact of cross-border attacks on Israeli citizens. The 1982 invasion teaches crucial lessons: the limitations of military force in achieving political objectives, the importance of balancing military actions with diplomacy, and the long-term impact of conflicts on civilian populations. Israel faces several obstacles in adopting a different approach today. These include persistent security threats, political pressure to show strength, and the complexity of negotiating with multiple factions, some of which do not officially recognize Israel. Despite these challenges, there are opportunities for change. Strengthening diplomatic channels, engaging with international partners for peace negotiations, and focusing on targeted defensive measures could offer alternatives to a large-scale military actions. The international community's role is pivotal. It can provide platforms for dialogue, mediate conflicts, and support initiatives that promote stability and peace in the region. As history shows, the path to peace is fraught with challenges, but not impossible. It requires a nuanced approach, one that learns from the past and forges a more stable and peaceful future. In recent developments, the Israel-Hamas prisoner exchange negotiations have reached a significant milestone. Israel and Hamas had agreed on a deal for the release of 50 hostages held in Gaza. In exchange, 150 Palestinian prisoners will be released by Israel. This agreement, reached recently, marks a crucial development in the relations between Israel and Hamas. The exchange is notably the first of its kind in more than a decade, and represents the largest prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas in history. The agreement is seen as a major step in a worldwide campaign involving these parties. In addition to the prisoner exchange, there is an agreement of 4-day truce in Gaza. These developments indicate a significant step toward the escalating tensions and potentially paving the way for further negotiations and peace efforts in the region. The agreement and the accompanying ceasefire could mark a new phase in the complex and often fraught relationship between Israel and Hamas. At Talbut Research, we reaffirm our commitment to advocating for peace and diplomatic resolutions to conflicts. History has repeatedly shown us the cost of war and the value of peaceful diplomatic solutions. In a world often torn by conflict, the pursuit of peace is not just a noble goal, but a necessary one for survival and prosperity of nations and people.